Bad compost can quietly ruin a garden long before you realize what's happening, and that's why today's topic matters. If your plants are stunted, leaves are yellowing, growth has slowed, or beds seem lifeless no matter how much you water or mulch, the problem may not be your soil or climate at all. It may be the compost you trusted. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to the Evergreen Garden channel and leave a comment below sharing your compost experience, because this is one lesson every gardener learns the hard way at least once. Most gardeners are told that compost is always good, but the truth is more uncomfortable. Compost can be unfinished, unbalanced, contaminated, or biologically inactive, and when that happens, it does more harm than good. Bad compost doesn't just fail to help your plants, it competes with them, locks up nutrients, introduces toxins, and can even kill seedlings outright. Understanding how compost goes wrong is the first step toward fixing it for good. Why unfinished compost starves plants instead of feeding them is something many gardeners overlook. When compost hasn't fully broken down, soil microbes continue decomposing it after you apply it. Those microbes need nitrogen to do their work, and they pull it directly from the soil around plant roots. The result is nitrogen starvation. Leaves turn pale, growth slows, and plants look hungry, even if you fertilize. A simple test is texture and smell. Finished compost is dark, crumbly, and smells earthy. If you can still identify food scraps, straw, or leaves, or if it smells sour or sharp, it's not ready. The fix is time and balance. Let compost mature for at least 3 to 6 months after active heating stops, and turn it every 2 weeks to reintroduce oxygen and speed stabilization. How poor carbon to nitrogen ratios create toxic compost is another silent issue. Compost needs a balance between browns and greens to break down properly. Too many greens, like fresh grass clippings, kitchen scraps, or manure, create anaerobic conditions. This leads to ammonia buildup and organic acids that burn roots. Too many browns slow decomposition to a crawl, leaving woody material that robs nitrogen when applied. The working ratio that consistently produces safe compost is roughly 2 parts browns to 1 part greens by volume. For example, if you add a bucket of kitchen scraps and grass clippings, you should add 2 buckets of dry leaves, shredded cardboard, or straw. If your compost smells like ammonia, add browns immediately and turn the pile to release trapped gases. Why contaminated compost can poison your soil is, a growing concern among serious gardeners. Compost made from treated lawn clippings, roadside leaves, or unknown manure sources can actually carry herbicide residues that survive composting. These chemicals, they distort growth, twist leaves, and stunt plants for years. Tomatoes, beans, peas, and sunflowers are especially sensitive to this. If seedlings emerge twisted or just fail to thrive, despite good care, you should really suspect contamination. The only reliable fix is prevention. Use inputs you trust. If you're using manure, make sure it comes from animals fed untreated hay. And if you're composting municipal waste, it's best to test a small batch first by planting beans in it and observing growth for 3 weeks. How immature compost damages seed germination is another problem that honestly catches gardeners off guard. Fresh compost generates heat and releases organic acids as it breaks down. When placed directly into seed beds, it can unfortunately prevent germination or rot seeds. That's why experienced growers never sow directly into raw compost. For seed starting and direct sowing, compost should be fully mature and mixed with soil at a ratio of 1 part compost to 3 parts native soil. For transplants, compost can be applied more generously, up to 1 part compost to 2 parts soil, as long as it's fully finished. Why compost can be biologically dead and how to revive it matters more than most people realize. Compost that has dried out, overheated repeatedly, or been stored too long loses microbial diversity. Without active biology, Compost becomes, well, little more than organic filler. Plants depend on living microbes to access nutrients. To revive dead compost, reintroduce moisture and life. Lightly water it until it feels like a wrung-out sponge. Then add a small amount of fresh compost, worm castings or garden soil and mix thoroughly. Let it sit for 2 weeks before use to allow microbial populations to rebuild. Applying too much compost and causing nutrient imbalances is a mistake that honestly even experienced gardeners can make. Compost isn't neutral. It actually contains nutrients, salts, and minerals. If you keep adding heavy amounts over and over, especially in raised beds, you can end up overloading your soil with things like phosphorus, potassium, and salts. This, in turn, leads to poor nutrient uptake and stressed plants. The right approach here is, well, moderation. For garden beds, you should apply compost once or twice a year and keep it to no more than 2 inches deep, mixing it lightly into the top 6 inches of soil. And for ongoing maintenance, just ½ an inch as a surface mulch is usually enough. Why compost texture matters more than people think becomes obvious in heavy clay or sandy soils. Compost that is too fine can compact, while compost that is too coarse fails to integrate. Good compost should contain particles of varied sizes, from fine humus to small fibrous material. This improves water retention in sandy soils and drainage in clay soils. If your compost is too fine, mix it with coarse organic matter like shredded leaves or aged bark at a ratio of 3 parts compost to 1 part coarse material before application. How to fix bad compost instead of throwing it away is where practical gardeners gain an advantage. Unfinished compost can be returned to the pile with added browns and thyme. Smelly compost can be aerated and dried slightly. Overly dry compost can be rehydrated gradually. Even contaminated compost can be repurposed for non-food landscapes, pathways, or tree mulching, where sensitive crops are not affected. Compost is rarely wasted if you understand its limitations. Why compost works best when matched to plant needs is an overlooked principle. Heavy feeders like tomatoes, corn, and squash benefit from richer compost applied at transplanting, mixed at 1 part compost to 2 parts soil. Light feeders like herbs prefer leaner soil and do better with compost used sparingly as a surface mulch. Seed beds require the most refined, mature compost, while perennial beds tolerate coarser material. Bad compost doesn't mean you failed as a gardener. It means you're learning the biology beneath your feet. When compost is made and used correctly, it becomes the foundation of resilient, productive gardens year after year. Fixing compost issues once saves seasons of frustration and wasted effort. If this guide helped you understand what's really happening in your soil, subscribe to the Evergreen Garden channel for serious, no-nonsense gardening knowledge that actually works. Share this with a fellow gardener who's struggling, and leave a comment below telling us what compost problem you faced in your own garden.